Hello, and welcome to the official TRAKMAN controller setup tutorial. In this guide, I'll be going over how to set up a TrackmaniaServer Forever server, as well as integrate the TRAKMAN controller onto the server. At the end, there will also be a section on how to migrate a Xaseco database to a TRAKMAN database, as this is what most people will be doing. Now, every step of this tutorial is already listed on the official GitHub page of TRAKMAN, but I thought I'd make this because it's easier to understand and it's just overall faster. So first of all, let's set up the TrackmaniaServer Forever server. Now, even with this step, some people already struggle, as the only tutorials are on the official old gamers.org website or a 10-year-old YouTube video. So to set up a Trackmania server, you're gonna want to go to the GitHub page of TRAKMAN or any other source. You can find it at gamers.org, you can probably find it on some forums, it doesn't matter. So you're gonna want to download the latest Trackmania Forever dedicated server, which today is version 2018-0221. So you just want to click on it, and you're gonna want to allow download. Now, once it's downloaded, you're gonna open up the file, and you're gonna go into a folder. You can make a folder. It doesn't matter where it is. I'm just making it on the desktop for the purpose of the tutorial. You're gonna drag all of these files from the zip onto the folder. Now, once that is done, we're gonna set up the server. So we're gonna go into game data, we're gonna go into config, and we're gonna go into this dedicated.cfg text file. This is where all of your server configuration is stored. So the first thing you'll see is this authorization level with these names and passwords. You do not need to change this. If you want to have extra security, you can, but it doesn't really matter. For the purpose of the tutorial, I'm not gonna do it. The next thing you'll see is this master server account section over here. The login is going to be the server login. You can make a dedicated server account on the Trackmania player page if you have a Trackmania United account, but if you have a Nations account like me, then you can just simply make a Nations account in-game, and that will be your server account. So now the next section is the server options. So in here you can set your server name. For the purpose of the tutorial, I'm just going to set it to TRAKMAN test. So we're just going to do that. The comment is what appears below the server name. I'm just going to set it to tutorial for now. Hide server, if you like, it says on the right here, if you want to hide it, you can set these values. For now, I'm not going to do it. The max players is as it is over here. And you can just scroll down until you get to this system config section. Now in this system config, you're going to want to, if you're going to have multiple servers running, each one of these has to be different. The same with this one. So for example, if I have this server running, it's going to stay at 0, but if I have another server running, then the ports here are going to be 2351 and 3451. For now, I'm just going to leave it at 0, and I'm not going to change it, and that's it. This is the same thing with this XML RPC port. You're going to need to add 1 or change it to a different number with each server that you have running. Now, of course, if you want other people to join your server, you're going to need to either port forward or use a cloud service. Now, I'm going to leave a link in the description below on a very useful site that has port forwarding tutorials for almost every router, and all you need to do is port forward these two ports to both TCP and UDP. And you also need to allow them to firewall, which I will teach you now. So you're gonna want to go to your control panel, then you're gonna want to go to System and Security, and then Windows Defender Firewall. Then after that, you're gonna go to Advanced Settings and Inbound Rules. Now in here, you're gonna make a new rule, and you're gonna go to Port, and you're gonna basically set this to 2350 as TCP and both as UDP, but you have to make specific rules or 2 separate rules for both TCP and UDP in the firewall. So we're going to do TCP and UDP over here, and we're going to allow connection. Just forget all of this, and you can change the name here as you're liking. So you're going to have to do this for both ports 2350 and 3450. XML RPC does not need to be port forwarded. It is not necessary. Now we are officially done with the configuration file. So now what we're going to want to do is actually set up the server. I'm going to be doing this tutorial on Windows. If you want to do it on Linux, it's just a tiny bit different, but it's almost the exact same thing. So what we're going to want to do is we're going to right click on the Trackmania server, and we're going to click create shortcut. Now we're doing this because we want to set these options, this target over here. So what we're gonna put in here is the following. So this over here specifies that this is gonna be the server, this is the file it has to execute. The game settings are basically gonna be the maps it's gonna read from, and the dedicated CFG is the file we just set up. You do not need to provide any sort of location for these files, it finds them automatically, it knows where they are. So I will put this in the description. We're just gonna copy this, paste it over here, and apply and OK. Now feel free to rename this file if you want to. You can name it start server, server start, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. So then we're gonna start the server. We're gonna click allow access if this window pops up. And this window will pop up, don't worry about it, just click OK. And there we go. We have officially set up our server. Our server is officially working, and I can showcase it to you that we can actually connect and play on it. So now if we go into the browser and we go type in the login, you see here TRAKMAN test, tutorial, and we can join the server and we can play, as you can see. Okay, so now let's set up the actual controller. So the first thing that we're gonna need is Node.js. Now, are you gonna go to the TRAKMAN page and click on the Node.js installer, and you're just gonna click on install. Make sure the version as listed over here needs to be above or this 16.9.0. Once you have the installer, you're just gonna click on it, you're gonna click OK, and we're just gonna click next, I accept, next, download it to wherever you want, next, next, and next, and install. And once it's finished installing, you just click finish, and that's it. Now, Postgres is a database, and we're also gonna need that. So we're gonna go over here, you're gonna pick your operating system, I'm gonna pick Windows, and you need 11 and above, so we're gonna download the installer. And we're gonna download the latest version over here. Now, once this executable is installed, we're just gonna click on it, wait for it to open, click yes if needed. Then we're gonna click next. You can again pick a directory where you want it. I'm gonna leave it as it is right now. In this section, you can just leave it as it is. If you want, you can remove something, but I suggest to leave it as it is. Again, directory. Now the password. The password, you can choose the password whatever you want, but make sure you remember it, write it down, it doesn't matter. You just have to remember it, as when you go into the actual Postgres interface, it will ask you for the super user password. The port, you can change it if you want, but 5432 is the default port. Just leave this as it is. Click next, and now we're gonna wait for the installation. Okay, so now that Postgres is installed, I'm gonna uncheck this, you don't need to. We're gonna click finish. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna open up Postgres. You can find pgadmin. You can also open it via the command line. I'm just gonna do it like this because it's easier to view. Okay, now that we open Postgres, we're gonna enter the master password, which we set in the beginning. Here we go. Now we're gonna click on this servers over here, and we're gonna enter the password for the user Postgres, which is again the same as the master password. Then we're gonna go into the databases over here, and we're gonna go create database, and you can call it whatever you want. I'm gonna call it TRAKMAN_DB. So now, once you have the TRAKMAN database installed, I'm gonna go back to the wiki, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna copy the wiki link over here, and we're gonna go into the directory where we want to install TRAKMAN. Now again, I have a specified folder for this, so we're gonna go into here, we're gonna open up, we're gonna shift right click in this folder, and we're gonna click open PowerShell window over here. Now for this, you need Git. You can clone it via Git, or you can also just click the code button and press download zip and then extract it. For the purpose of the tutorial, I'm gonna need Git. If you want to do it this way, you need to install Git. The link will be in the description. So we're gonna do Git clone, and we're gonna just simply paste this link and click enter. We're gonna wait for it to clone, and there we go. So now we have the TRAKMAN folder over here. We're gonna double click it. So we're gonna go back to the window over here, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna go into the actual, so we're gonna go cd TRAKMAN. Now we're in the actual folder, and we're gonna do cp.env.example.env. This is basically gonna copy this .env example and just rename it to .env. You can of course just rename this file, but it doesn't really matter. So then we're gonna go into the .env file, and we're gonna need to configure some stuff here. So the server IP is gonna be either localhost or this over here, the localhost IP, or a different IP, it doesn't matter. The server port is gonna be your XML RPC port that we set in the dedicated server config. The super admin name is gonna be the super admin name, and the password is gonna be what you set it. Since I didn't change it, I'm just gonna put it over here. Now the database config is gonna be Postgres. That is the database name over here, and the database password is gonna be to what you set the password, and the database name is going to be the database name that you have created. The database IP is going to be, you're going to leave it as it is, and the port is the port that we set in the installer. By default is 5432. Owner login is going to be the login of the master admin. Of course, you will be able to add more master admins via commands in the controller, but here we're going to have to specify one. So we're going to do my login. And after that, the Dedimania password. As it says, this is either the server password or the player page community code. I'm going to set it to the server password. The free zone password is your password for the free zone. And the web services is the same thing. And now logging. If you want Discord log to be enabled, this is basically going to send every event that happens in the console to Discord and ping the respective users if a crash occurs or a fatal occurs, which can be changed by this log level, of course. For now, I'm going to disable it. You can just delete it, or you can type no, or you can type anything, and there we go. That is simple. So after that, what we're going to want to do is we're going to close this window. We're going to go back to the PowerShell, and we're going to run npm I. What this is going to do is it's going to install all necessary packages that are needed for the controller to actually function. There aren't that many of them, so this process is not going to take that long. As you can see, it's already done. And after that, what we're going to want to do is we're going to type in npm run build. This is going to basically convert the code that is written in TypeScript into native JavaScript so we can run the controller. After that, what we're going to want to do is we're just going to type npm run start, and this is going to start up our server. Now, if you do get some database errors, the only fix that we are currently aware of is to simply run this command over here, and each time the error is going to change, and eventually it's going to work. So as you can see, controller started successfully. Now, if we go onto the server, you can see over here, the UI is working, everything is working, the latest version, everything works just fine as it is. And that is pretty much it. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to migrate the Xaseco database to a TRAKMAN database. This process is very simple. Again, you can click this code button and download it and extract it, or you can use Git, which I will do. And we're going to go into a folder. You can place this anywhere, of course. We're going to shift right click again, open PowerShell window, and we're going to git clone, paste the link, and do --depth 1. Okay, now that it's cloned, we are going to close this. We're going to go into here, and we need to modify this again. So we're going to open a PowerShell, and we are going to basically type in cp env example .env. It's going to copy it. Then we're going to go in it, and we have to specify the MySQL database. Now, of course, because it's MySQL, this is obviously your Xaseco database. This is all of the info that is needed in here. So the host is going to be localhost, the user is going to be root, the MySQL password is going to be whatever you set it, and the MySQL database is going to be your database. So for me, it's Xaseco_DB. Then this is the database that we're going to migrate to, the Postgres database. And so the host is again localhost, the user is just Postgres by default, the password is whatever you set it to, and the database is the database that you want to migrate to. So in this case it's TRAKMAN_database. The port is by default 5432, and here you can choose what you want to migrate. Now keep in mind that if you want to migrate sectors, and there's a lot of them, the process will take longer than usual. So for the purpose of the tutorial, I'm just going to disable it. You can just disable it, you can type in whatever you want, you can type no, it doesn't matter, as it only checks if the value is yes, and that's it. So now we're going to save our file, and we're going to want to make sure before we actually start the migration process, we need to make sure that we have two things. So first of all, we're going to install all of the required modules, packages, and as you can see it's done. And we want to make sure that we have both MySQL and Apache services on before we start the migration, because it needs obviously to read from the database. So now we're just going to simply type in node migrate.mjs, and as you can see it's very quick because we didn't obviously migrate sector records. And if we now go into the SQL shell of Postgres, we can check if everything is correct. So we're going to log in, we're going to do server localhost, the database is the database that we've migrated to. The port is 5432, the username is Postgres, and the password is what you set it to. And now if we do -D, of course everything is here, that's fine. And now we are going to check a value of, for example, let's say records. So if we want to check the value of records, we're going to do select all from records, and that. And as you can see, there are values that have been set in 2021 over here, and the player IDs, the times. We can obviously check one more if we want to. So let's say we want to check players, so let's do select star from players. Okay, now if we get this error, we're going to do a very simple fix. We're going to do set client encoding to UTF-8, make sure there's a semicolon, and now it's set. And now if we do select all from players, as you can see, all of the players are over here, and everything works just fine. So thank you for watching this tutorial. I hope it was informative enough. I hope you learned something. If you have any questions, feel free to post them. If you have any suggestions, or if you found a bug in the controller or anything, please post it on the issues on the GitHub page. And yeah, that's it. Thank you and goodbye.
Alright, here we are with the Linux version of the TrackMan installation tutorial. If you're somewhat skilled with Linux administration, you likely don't really need this one. However, many people aren't, so yeah. I'll begin by mentioning that I'm obviously running Arch Linux here, as you can probably tell by the new fetch on the right here, and the title of my virtual machine as well. Therefore, this tutorial in particular is tailored towards Ubuntu or other apt-based distributions, so keep that in mind. First thing first, we probably want to open a terminal right here and install Postgres, because, well, so we did this by executing sudo apt install post. What to write here is sudo apt install postgresql and postgresql encrypt. My password is yes, by the way, so yeah, we agreed to this, because why wouldn't we? And we're installing this shit after all. While we're waiting, we're just gonna wait. It's gonna take a bit. Alright. So after we're done, we kind of need to create a user to use the database, and that is done with the sudo u U flag is the username you change to, because sudo changes your user, normally to root if you specify nothing. What you do is do Postgres PSQL, and that will give you access to the database. But yeah, you can't really do this because that's the default. You can obviously create databases on the Postgres user, but that's not a good practice. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna quit. You do this by \q. So we need to create a user to use the database. How do we do this? We write this shit. Enter the name of role to add. We're gonna add a role called TRAKMAN. Shouldn't it be a super user? Yes. Yeah, that's it. That's kind of what happens. And after this, you wanna create a database that has the same name as your newly created user, because that's how permissions work in Postgres. So you do this by performing a simple operation. Again, you do sudo u Postgres createDB, and you call it TRAKMAN. It keeps telling me that it can't change directory. It doesn't matter. It shouldn't happen. So after you have created a user inside Postgres, you need to create a user inside your system. And you do this by performing a simple command called sudo add user and the username. It's going to be TRAKMAN here. It's going to ask you for a password, which is, you know, I can just say yes, 1 or something. Okay, it's really not liking this path. Enter your full name. So my full name is obviously TRAKMAN. Room number, I don't know, like 1. Work phone, whatever. Yes. Now you have a user. What you do now is, well, sudo u TRAKMAN PSQL, and now you have a database. You do have a database called TRAKMAN now. I mean, you don't have a database called TRAKMAN. You need to create a database. So after we're done with the Postgres installation, we should probably install Node, because Node.js is kind of a vital part of the controller, if you ask me. So you do this by normally performing a sudo apt install Node.js operation, but if we just perform a quick search here, if we find, we'll find out that Node.js in this system in particular is of version 12. Why is this bad? So I'm gonna explain here. Yes, the requirement for TRAKMAN here is Node.js 16. And as you can probably tell, 16 does not equal 12. That is basic math. So to perform an installation of a more recent version of Postgres, we'll have to install it from another source, which is the Node source project. So to install a more modern version of Node on your Ubuntu system, you will need to add another repository, which in our case is going to be Node source, which provides builds for Debian-based distributions. To get it, we write the following: curl fs_sl https deb.nodesource.com/setup 18.x. 18 is the latest LTS version as of now. And then we pipe it onto sudo e, which preserves environment variables, bash, which is, you know, the command line interpreter, dash will pass the file, and sudo apt install Node.js. And also, you would probably need to install npm, so do this by writing sudo apt install npm, but it's gonna like try. What in the fuck is happening here, bro? What the fuck? npm. Yeah, okay, you're a